Hey, this is Sonny from State of Anarchy. I'm here with Carey Wedler, journalist and editor-in-chief of the Anti-Media. That's actually where I first kind of came to know your work with the Anti-Media. And one of the first things I wanted to touch on is how you guys have been the victim of the Facebook purge or the social media purge that happened last year. I mean, would you mind telling us kind of what the Anti-Media has gone through and other organizations too that are in the freedom community?
Yeah, sure. So anti-media has actually, we don't have original content anymore for the time being, because I think a problem with the social media independent news model is that we were dependent on these platforms. It wasn't just anti-media, it's like all of us. And so when we lost our reach through Facebook, where we had 2 million followers, and we were banned from Twitter, our revenue went with it. So right now we're serving as a news aggregator for the sites that are still producing original content, which is great, but I miss it. I miss anti-media. It's been rough. I feel like, so it happened on October 11th of last year, and I knew that there was going to be censorship coming because the Alex Jones had been banned in August. I just didn't think that we were going to get caught up in it so soon, because we explicitly avoid sensationalism. We're super careful about fact checking. And so it took me by surprise. Like, I remember our founder and editor-in-chief, Nick Burnaby, he messaged me that day and he was like, our page got unpublished. And I was just like, it'll be back. Like, no worries, it's fine. It's probably just a glitch. And then later in the day, I was personally banned from Twitter, and Anti-Media was banned from Twitter. Our creative executive was banned from Twitter. Others were banned. So I started to realize, like, wait a minute, maybe this isn't a glitch. I sort of went through the 5 stages of grief with it. I couldn't tell you the order, but it was like denial, and then bargaining, and then anger. And I think I'm finally at acceptance. I'm still mad about it, but I've said what I have to say. And it's very unfortunate. To this day, I don't know exactly why it happened. Twitter denied my appeal. Facebook just stopped responding to us. They ignored our appeal. And then we had a rep, actually, that they had assigned to us. We didn't ask for this, but a couple months before we were purged, I guess sometime over the summer, they reached out to us with a representative to help us grow our page and partner with them. They gave us free advertising 2 weeks before we were deleted. That representative stopped responding to us shortly after the purge. So we're doing our best, still trying to find a way forward. We're not stopping. So at least there's that.
What was their initial justification for even suspending you in the first place?
I believe on Facebook they said, like, coordinated inauthentic behavior. They issued a press release for it, and they basically said that people were either using like clickbait to drive people to ad farms, which we weren't doing, or people were using, like, they were creating fake accounts, which to my knowledge we also weren't doing. I've heard that some people were doing that in order to spam groups within our corner of the internet. 1, I don't know if that's true. 2, we were given no notice, no warning, nothing. We were just unpublished, and then nobody ever got back to us. And then when I received, so actually it's quite funny. Well, it's not funny, but it is funny. When I got my first email from Twitter saying I was banned, it said specifically for blank, nothing. They didn't say why I was banned. And then when I did my appeal and they rejected my appeal, they put all these words together basically saying, like, you're not allowed to manipulate user experiences on Twitter, like manipulate feeds, and you're not allowed to disrupt user experiences, which I didn't do. I just posted videos and articles, and I was on Twitter like twice a month, if that. So they never got back to me again. Why would they? There's nothing left for me to do. And it's like such a tease, because I can still go to Twitter and I can still look at people's posts, but it, like, I don't have any followers. I'm not following anyone. I still get notifications if someone mentions me, but it's so funny. It's like so passive aggressive. There's this notice I get that says, like, what? You haven't tweeted anything yet? Like, well, I would if you let me, but I don't know. They haven't figured out their platform design far enough to account for censorship.
It seems like, I mean, to me, it seemed like the whole spamming and bot was really just a pretext, because it seemed like a lot of I don't know, similarly, I guess, ideologically aligned sites were kind of swept up at once, like specifically anti-war type sites, or Police to Police was one of that was taken down, that I think's back up now. But I mean, do you think that, do you believe them when they say that it was a case of just kind of trying to stop Russian bots from influencing the political conversation? Do you think there might have been concerted effort to silence certain voices?
I think that if there was a concerted effort, we're not going to know about it for a very long time. I mean, progressive pages were removed. There were Trump supporting pages that were removed. There definitely seemed to be a commonality with some of these pages that we were very anti-war, obviously police accountability. Then there's the fact that they were working with the Atlantic Council. They've been working with the Atlantic Council, which is an offshoot of NATO, and it's chaired by like just military industrial scumbags. I would like to use a dirtier word, but let's go with that. That's bad enough. But we can't prove that they influenced the decision, and they're not owning up to it. So barring a whistleblower coming out and saying like, hey, you guys are banned because of the message you're spreading, there isn't much we can do. But I do think also that there is validity to the notion that they banned us in a broader sweep to try basically to restore their credibility against the claims of Russian interference. So if they can remove people and they can make it look like they did something and they're actually looking out to stop foreign, whatever it is they're saying, whether it's foreign interference, domestic propaganda, whatever they're saying, I do think I think that is part of it. They're trying to save their reputation.
Okay, I mean, and in these times, like, what are some of the alternative means of for lack of a better word, I mean, making a living from this? I mean, if we can't rely on the social media platforms that were, your bread and butter before, what? I mean, are there like blockchain solutions like Steam or DTube that you guys have been looking into, or I mean, what are some of the avenues you've explored personally?
Yeah, actually, right before we were banned, I mean, we were getting ready to roll out a press release because we had partnered with the Library Coin. They're awesome. They're basically an anti-censorship cryptocurrency, and they built us an entire blockchain-based platform to store all of our content where it can't be removed, which is great. The only problem is we lost our Facebook following, so we couldn't tell people about it. So it's been quite frustrating. And to be honest, we don't all have a strategy going forward because we were so locked into the social media model. Yes, there's Steemit, there's Minds, and it is really important to support platforms like that and to start a migration over there. But the problem I have not yet been able to solve is I want to reach the normies. I want to reach the people who are on Facebook, who haven't realized that there's even a problem there yet when it comes to censorship. I want to reach those people, maybe even people who are advocating the censorship. I will still want to talk to them. The people on Minds and Steemit have already started to realize maybe there's a new way forward, there's a new paradigm, and I'm so grateful for them. And I just started posting on Steemit again now that I'm making videos. I took quite a long break because I was really devastated about losing anti-media. But yeah, alternatives are important, and we are working on that. It's just, I don't have an answer for you as far as reaching as many people as we used to. That may be a different time, and it's just passed. But I have heard a lot of people, content creators in our movement, talking about doing direct email lists, like going back to the original internet. So that could be a possibility, but it will take time to build up.
For sure. I mean, I guess if you had the answer, you would probably have a $1 million idea right now. But speaking of the normies, one of the things that I remember you saying previously is that your first vote was actually for Barack Obama. Am I correct about that?
That's correct.
Me too. Actually, in 2008, 2008. That was my first vote as a eligible voter. I mean, embarrassingly, I was up until I voted for Bernie Sanders as well. So I only got off the train relatively recently. But explain your I guess political evolution. Like, how did you go from being a more mainstream liberal, for lack of a better term, to someone who, I mean, also, how would you describe yourself politically? I don't want to attribute a label to you.
I don't like to label myself either, and I think that anarchist is a dirty word to a lot of people, not to me, but to a lot of people. I'm just, I don't believe in government. I favor and advocate voluntary interactions, and government necessarily violates that basic principle. So I'm not a statist, but I was a really big statist. And that goes back to, I mean, I'm from Los Angeles. So I was raised in a very liberal, progressive community and environment. And the reason I liked Barack Obama is he talked about ending the wars. And that was always the biggest issue for me. Like, I always wished I could go back to the 60s and protest the Vietnam War when I was like 16. Like, not anymore, because we saw what happened to the baby boomer generation. Things sort of fell off and died down. But I admired the people who protested war. I admired Barack Obama because he said he was going to end the wars. So that's really what I fell for. And he talked about holding people accountable, like holding special interests and all of the corporate cronies accountable. And then he didn't do that. And it was when I was, let's see, it was 2011. So I just finished college and I was doing an internship at a film studio of all places. And I just felt ignorant, like, because I had always cared about issues like being anti-war. I had cared about surveillance. I cared about these things. And I just dropped the ball because I thought, okay, well, Obama was going to fix it. And a few years later, tried to inform myself, and I was very disturbed by what I learned about how he had continued the wars. He had appointed all of these people from the financial industries to his cabinet, industry, not multiple. And so I was really upset. And then I had a friend who just swooped in with some Ron Paul videos that summer, and I never went back.
Oh, so Ron Paul was who ushered you into, I guess the freedom movement, or I don't know what word to really use either, because anarchist is a really dirty word, and I don't even really like the this I guess the A, like that spray painted looking A. I feel like that implies like disorder and chaos and violence, and it's really not kind of what we're going for. So okay, and then being in LA, I mean, how did that go over with your with your circle?
Well, I'm lucky, I guess, that my friends are apolitical. Like, they're not dogmatic about those things in any way. I certainly struggled with my mom for a while because she's like a proud progressive, and she's probably the reason I'm so anti-war and the reason I do what I do. I mean, when I was little, she would always tell me, like, do whatever you want, just do something that helps the planet, you know, like, just be a good person and like make a difference. But she was still very tied into, you know, she's from a different time. She's from a different generation, back when like there was some semblance of government accountability and actually serving the people. But overall, I mean, I lost a couple friends for sure. And I think that's probably more because I was so aggressive as opposed to like them just not liking my views. I attributed to that back then. But when I think back on it, I'm like, oh, wow, Carey, you were like really, really reactive about it. But I mean, it's understandable. Of course, you're going to be angry when you first realize how bad things are. I mean, it's kind of weird if you're not angry. And as I've grown up and I've been doing this a while, I've calmed down a bit and I've realized, like, okay, maybe I'm more effective if I'm not just mad all the time. But it's been tough in the yoga community of all places. I've kind of left the yoga community here because they were so gung-ho for either Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton and just so quick to rationalize like their government killing people that I just couldn't be a part of it anymore. But I'm so grateful to have this awesome community on the internet and sometimes in person, like in Acapulco.
Right. I mean, that's what's really great about Acapulco. I think that I don't know about you. I mean, how many years have you attended?
This year was my 4th year.
Okay. I mean, it's only this, and it's only been around for 5. This was his 5th year. Okay. It should have been there pretty much from the beginning. I mean, I don't know about you. You kind of have been in this circle a little bit longer than I have, but I never run into people in person like that have this, that really are as passionate about this kind of stuff as me and my one friend Carmen, who is, you know, I don't know if you've met him or not, but he's also part of the State of Anarchy. But it was pretty much just us, like, just arguing with everyone we knew for like 10 years outside of high school until we discovered Acapulco. So it's really great. And that's where I actually discovered you on the speaker list for Acapulco in 2018. And then that's kind of how I started becoming familiar with your work. I kind of, well, let me ask you this. Here's another topic that you covered in one of your Acapulco speeches. The fact that there really, I mean, if you walked around Acapulco, you looked around, you would see there are really not many women in this community. I mean, they exist. Obviously, you're a testament to that. But clearly, we need to, you know, make our brand, so to speak, a little bit more marketable, a little bit more appealing to women. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I have many thoughts on this. I'm actually working on a video that takes a lot of the subject matter from that speech. It's about toxic femininity. And I think a lot of the problem is the grip that the Democratic Party has over younger women. Like, if you look at the statistics, most younger millennial women, like, they're Democrats. They lean Democratic. And it's because they've successfully marketed themselves to women's empowerment. And it's incredibly hypocritical and contradictory. And I'm going to talk about that in the video. And I talked about it in my speech. And that's really important. And we need to really get down to the issue of women not feeling like individuals and being collectivized into their femininity, having very little self-worth as a matter of culture, although that applies to men too. I think it's a human being thing. I think women are a little more tied into external fixes for that because we've been programmed into it. I know being from LA, I certainly was. However, something that's really important is it's not just the Democratic Party. It's not just something being wrong with women. Our little movement has a lot of problems when it comes to this, whether it's the tendency of men to just literally just be like, well, women are irrational. They're too emotional to understand the logic of libertarianism. It's like, dude, who do you think you're going to convince? What woman is going to want to have a conversation with you when you basically just tell her she's incapable of rational thought? Like, duh, no wonder we don't have more women. You look at the comment sections on these pages, it's embarrassing. And like, there have been many individual experiences I've had that have really made me wonder why I spend my time here. And I still feel that way, honestly. I'm glad I get to stay in my apartment and like do my work from home because there's so many dudes in this movement who have been inappropriate. I've been harassed. I've had very creepy experiences with people, both who are big names and both who are just people who follow the big names. So there's a lot to work on there. But as I said in my speech, they're suffering too. Like the reason they behave this way is because they have unhealed trauma, just like me, just like any other woman who doesn't love herself. And so I'm trying to focus a lot of not a lot, because I'm still very focused on the political and government and the philosophy of anarchism, but I think it's really important for people to start talking about personal growth and personal accountability and really like not avoiding the things that cause us anguish, because when we do that, that's when we end up blaming other people, like saying that it, like Stefan Molyneux came out, I think before he even got on the Trump train, and he was talking about how like it's everything that's a problem in the world is women's fault. It's like, are you okay, dude? Because you preach this philosophy of like personal accountability and responsibility, and you're like blaming half the population for your problems. So that's a problem. But I'm glad he's out of our movement now. He's moved along.
Where is he now? Is he not? I know he doesn't call himself an anarchist anymore. What's he, just a nationalist now, or a ethno-nationalist or something? I don't know.
I mean, I didn't even know he had stopped calling himself an anarchist. And to his credit, like I used to really like Stefan Molyneux. He gave me a lot of great insights through watching his videos. He has a lot of really awesome points, which is why it's so disappointing that he did go pro-Trump. And to my knowledge, I think he's just like I don't know. But I would say like a white ethno-nationalist, but I'm not going to speak for him. But he seems to have really jumped on like the race realism and like just the collectivization of groups of people and being very pro-government. So I don't know.
Yeah, I did like him a lot as well. And then I people are entitled to have, the wrong opinion sometimes, but I've heard him give some interviews or ask some questions that were clearly like I'm leading in a very inappropriate way, in my opinion. Like ask like some, I don't know. I mean, there's a stupid example. Someone's talking about their problem with their African immigrant wife, and he just happens to mention like IQ statistics, which and something like it's really like you know where you're going with that when you make that kind of comment. But in terms of, I guess, the nuts and bolts. I mean, listen, I get that believe me, I have no doubt that there's creepy people in this movement, but that being said, in terms of like messaging, how do we kind of? It seems as though like the anti-war, I guess more empathetic side of politics is so monopolized by the Democrats or by the left or whatever you want to call it. How do we get people, not just women, but I guess people who are attracted to that aspect of what they see in liberalism? How do we get them over here? Like, how do we show them that actually we're the ones who are like anti-war, we're the ones who are against police brutality? Like, it seems like we're somehow painted as like reactionary, thuggish type people by the in the mainstream. So how do you think that we could approach this?
I think number one is we have to stop being so insulting to people. And believe me, this is like, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not just speaking for other people. I'm so guilty of this. If you watch, especially like my older videos, we're so condescending, like, oh, you're stupid, you don't get economics, oh, how basic, like, oh, how stupid of you to want to like help the poor, as opposed to like, hey, I too would like to help the poor. Let's look at the systems that do this best. Let's look at the systems that actually lift people out of poverty and look at how that works. In my opinion, that would be libertarian policies and free market policies. Let's address that. Let's talk about that, because we have the same goal. So let's find a way that we can achieve that goal, because it's so easy to make fun of these people. Like it's just a constant attack on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah, I think her policies are ridiculous. I think she's uninformed. I think she's like especially reactive and pretty mean. But like, whose mind are you going to change by mocking her? Who subscribes to her that's going to hear you calling them stupid and making fun of her? That's going to be like, you know what? Yeah, they're right. I like how they talk down to me. I'm going to go hang out with them instead. Like, no way, not going to happen. So I think ultimately, again, that comes down to us going inward, because I understand why we can be reactive. I understand why we're frustrated. I understand why we can be mean. I mean, I just filmed a video on Julian Assange being arrested, and I'm like kind of confrontational in it. I get it. And sometimes there is a time and a place for that. But I think, especially in like one-to-one or one-on-one interactions, and even as we're like curating our brands, it's really important to just try to be nice. Like, people respond a lot better when you don't make fun of them and insult their intelligence. Crazy, I know.
I think I don't know. I think I really don't think that the people that do it mean to be harmful. I think they get excited that they're like, they get to put their opinion out there, and people feel important, especially when the anonymity that's behind, you have behind a keyboard. People wouldn't usually talk to one another so disparagingly. Like, if I'm sure if you had a conversation, you and I had a conversation with a liberal, we wouldn't call them an idiot in the middle. Well, maybe, but most likely we wouldn't call them an idiot in the middle of a conversation. Whereas, you're commenting on YouTube, and I'm sure you've gotten some crazy YouTube comments. I mean, I'll kind of end with this, because the stuff that I like to talk about is really like the philosophy, but also the like, how can we be pragmatic about this? So, like, when people come to you and see, because there are some questions that I really don't have the answer to. If somebody says, oh, well, you don't have taxation, what do we do about, how do we secure, or how do we protect ourselves from foreign threats? What do we do about the X number of people on Y government program? Like, things of that nature. Like, do you have answers to those questions? You kind of, like, I don't know, how do you approach it? Because I kind of answer in the case and say that I'm not all knowing, but I just think a gradual reduction in government is probably the right way to go. I mean, how do you respond to those kinds of questions?
A big thing for me that seems to resonate with people is just the concept of decentralization. Like, it's not practical, nor is it effective to have this giant federal government managing hundreds of millions of people's lives and making rules for all of us. But I've noticed there are kind of two schools of thoughts when it comes to spreading the philosophy and the message. So on one hand, we have like the Larkin Roses, and I love Larkin. Like, he's one of my biggest inspirations and influences. But what I've done is Candles in the Dark seminar, and one of the things he says is, like, when people ask you, like, well, but what about the roads, and what about this or that? In his view, and I tend to agree, just for myself, that doesn't matter. We're talking about a moral issue. We're talking about initiating violence against people. And the people doing it don't have the right to do that, because we don't have the right to do that. And we can't give the government a right we don't have. So in his view, and generally in my view, that's a moot point. Like, we're talking about an inherently violent and corrupt and coercive system. But then there's the other philosophy, other influencers I've talked to, who think that one of the best ways to spread the message is that practicality of, like, okay, well, how would a private road system work? How would we defend ourselves? Like, how would a private police force work? And I think that is really important too. So I think that comes down to educating ourselves on real world examples of where these things work. So if, for example, in Switzerland, I think it's Switzerland, could be Sweden, as I talk about educating ourselves, I should Google that again. Or let's say DuckDuckGo it. We don't want to Google it, but there are examples of where there are private roads that work. I don't pretend to have all of the details. And honestly, the people who do kind of just annoy me, because it's like, dude, come on. Like, one of the tenets of the economics that we subscribe to is the knowledge problem. It's like no single person, no single bureaucracy, no single entity can have all the answers and have all of the understanding of what makes an economy work, right? So there's there's billions of people on this planet. And I just think that of all the billions of people, as individuals, we have the capacity to come up with working systems that are voluntary. But again, the practicality is really important, but so is the morality. So I'm torn. I go both ways, and I think both are important.
Well, Larkin is actually, I mean, as hopefully you are as well, going to be speaking at Anarchadelphia in September. I mean, he's in the Philly area, and I really do like his work. But I personally feel like, all right, see, when you were talking about, you want to reach the normies, and that's why you don't want to just be relegated to, blockchain type platforms or whatever. I feel like I agree with him on the moral perspective, but it's going to be hard to convince, like they say, a middle-aged person whose, pension and future is all tied up into an innumerable amount of government programs, to just say, well, think about it from a macro moral perspective. You kind of understand what I mean? Like it's true. It may not be incorrect that it's immoral to base all of these systems off of the threat of, shooting them if they don't comply. But I just really want to be able to have a conversation with, like, my dad and explain to him how, this is actually going to benefit his life, not just, like, from a philosophical standpoint. I mean, that's just my point of view. I really, I really would like to see Anarchapulco, or things like Anarchapulco, be more than just a book club, which is kind of what it seems like it is now. There's all people that we're all talking about things that we already agree with, and no one's mind gets changed at these events. And I think it's kind of good to remember there's people that aren't on the same page as us with a lot of these things. That's just how I look at it.
No, I totally agree. And I think what I love about our community, and what I think really is a testament to the beauty of individual liberty and our own unique skills, is that everybody reaches a different crowd. Like, I'm reaching a different crowd than Derek Rose's or than Larkin Rose's or any of these people. And that's what's so great about it. And that's why I love it. Like, I thought that I had to be able to change everybody's mind and convert them. But I realize now, like, I have a voice that's going to resonate with certain people, maybe former liberals. For some reason, a lot of veterans tell me that, like, when they got out of the military, they saw my Obama video where I blowtorched the shirt, and that got them and pulled them in. And now they're full anarchists. But then there's so many great people who can articulate this message, and they can appeal to different people who come from different varieties of statism. So honestly, I don't think there is one right way to do it. I think everybody finds their own way to it. Some people find it through nutrition, like they look at the food supply and then they see the statism that's created it. Some people find it through technology. I know people, like a lot of people came to Anarchapulco for the cryptocurrency. They didn't even come for the anarchism. They came, or they got into crypto first and then they realized anarchism. So I think it has to be decentralized. There's no one right way to do it, but there is something to be said for the practicality of it. We can't just go on the moral argument, as much as that is the foundation of it all. And that's what matters most to me. There is a place for really being knowledgeable and aware of how markets work and how they help people.
Okay, well, Carey, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. Hopefully you're going to be able to make it to Anarchadelphia in September 14th to the 16th.
I think that's the plan.
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, just, we'll see you in September then. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really
sounds
appreciate
good. Thanks for having me. It was nice talking with you.
You too.
Join the State of Anarchy this September's Harvest Moon in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where this gathering of like minds aims to foster unbreakable relationships between the movement's leading forces, whom teach self-love and ownership, blockchain techno-economics, as well as exposing the Earth's sacred hidden knowledge. So will we see you there?